I think it's like everything else. There's zero nuance in the public conversation, and it is, uh, uh, you know, managers are dumb. They don't get agile. The reason this is happening is because I know because I've seen it. It has no accounting for the actual people in the domain in the company who have said, what's happening. Maybe we do want to have some form of, why call this thing agile anyway? Shouldn't we just be that way and not have to name it and claim it?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, if we start one level earlier, I would say we all know. I mean, if we are honest, neither you nor me, we have any idea what's going on in Capital One. We cannot know what is going on in boardrooms across the world. But one thing that we do know, and that is a fact, is that the Agile movement is now 20 years old and we still haven't penetrated boardrooms. I mean, that's a fact. How it comes about and what it means, and how to say, it's very easy to say they have to change, they made a mistake, they don't get it. But as a matter of fact, getting into the boardroom and getting people interested in what is happening. I mean, when you're talking about agile, but let's still say any kind of product that affects an enterprise. We could say SAP or so. If I want to sell you SAP, I'm probably not going to sell it to an accountant in a third department of finance. I'm going to sell it in the boardroom. And if I want to sell any kind of thing that is supposed to change how the enterprise operates, the people in the boardroom must say, we want this and we would like it to succeed. Because if the people in the boardroom don't understand what is going on, what the value of this thing is, and what their stake is in it, then most likely there will always be a disjoint between what the boardroom thinks is happening and what is actually going on. And that is the condition of the agile movement for 20 years.
It makes me wonder if, again, the whole idea, even at the very beginning, was it? And again, I don't know much of the history about all. Again, I know the guys at Snowbird, they were the tools vendors, right? So, and they were coming from the engineering practices and consulting that, um that I I don't think they were coming from the engineering discipline, and engineering in that corporate environment. And this is, it's a cost. It is a labor cost. It is not revenue generation. So to sell, so you're sell what are you selling as these values and principles coming out of this domain? You're saying you're killing people. You're 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 not giving customers what they want. We're not building software that makes a difference. Okay, right. In the 90s, we were waiting 6 months before a year, 2 years, and five before we got software. Sure. And then we were killing people, and then customers weren't getting what they wanted. Great. That's a problem worth solving. That is it, and it was, but I don't think that's the problem. I, I don't think it's the problem that needs to be solved now. And
Yeah.
the boardroom would have listened to, and did, for a time in the 90s and early 2000s, but it just doesn't resonate anymore.
Yeah, I see. I mean, I don't even know what it was like in the 90s. I was not in the corporate world. I was still studying in university back at that time. So that might predate me, but what I do know is that the first years I did spend in the corporate world, we still had a lot of this kind of you must follow the process and everything is defined and you just need to how to say, I was starting my career in testing, and it was like, here's the specification. Now you create the test cases. On day X, you will get some software, and then you're going to start testing it and then raise a lot of defects. And so that was the kind of process, and it was a communication by document and ticket, but not communication by people. But I see that we see a kind of a bifurcation already in the industry. Many companies, especially small, medium enterprises, it cannot even work like that. It's natural that we have collaboration, communication, in many cases, cross-functional teams. And we do not see in a small, medium enterprise world those 6 months plus cycles in most companies. I've been working with companies, they much rather have the problem that we try to address with XP, which is if you shove out everything on a rush, then quality goes downhill over time. So what I see is an SME world is most likely okay. Customer comes, and then in the evening the change is already live on production, and at night we're fighting the fires that we caused. And that is what we try to address with engineering practice. But that one has been completely sanitized out of, for example, Scrum, which is not talking about engineering practice at all anymore. It's just about how do we organize as a team. So, like you say, that's not solving the problem that we have. But in the corporate world, we still see some of them. I would say they're the laggards when it comes to the adoption of modern ways of working, who are still very much in this industrial age. Okay, separation of labor, everything must be efficient. And I love the metaphor that Klaus Leopold likes to use in his training. Suppose you have a computer keyboard and you have one person whose responsibility is to press A, and another person whose responsibility is to press B, and so on. Each person can work very, very efficiently, but how much coordination effort do you think it is just to get a single word typed on this thing? Whereas one person who has access to the entire keyboard can do it in a second without even thinking about it. So that is the kind of problem that those corporations who have not adapted towards the new ways of working, thinking about outcomes rather than outputs, they're still not there. But they are the minority. And I think that at some point, for those corporations, it's very easy to explain the benefits of a new way of working, to say that, look, the cost we're having here that you're paying for is 1% implementation, 99% coordination. And the
Mhm.
coordination is not billable to the customer. The customer doesn't care how much you coordinate. So let's cut down the coordination and focus on value generation. And what we say, the business case is very obvious.
Mhm.
Say implementation gets twice as expensive, and in 99% coordination, we save 50% on that. Well, we're not getting more expensive, we still save 40% or so. So that is something that we can easily communicate in the boardroom. And the boardroom says, please go do it. But that does not answer the question, which stake does the boardroom have in this?
Yeah. And it's just it's the I love how you said. I mean, it is. It's the industrial age problem is the coordination problem.
Yes.
It's not the creativity problem. It is not the desire is not to be more creative. You know, if you're not spending money, well, again, I don't know. I'm not in the boardroom either, but that logically you think, uh, why would I? Because that activity, that engineering activity has not been in this company a creative problem. Um, hmm. Yeah, sure. Let's spend a few $1 million to make coordination better. That's great. It'll make our costs go down. Yeah, and then 5 years later, Can we make the costs go down a little more? Can we make them go down just a little more, even more? And that's why it seems to me just from the outside looking in, and the whole picture of this is that the conceit is that agile software development, the manifesto for agile software development. So that is about the engineering silo. It's making the engineering silo more coordinate better, efficiently, and effectively in certain ways. But it's the cost center. It's not the value generation center. It's not the revenue. It's not. It doesn't make the pocketbook light up. Yeah. So I just think that agile coming out of engineering is only ever going to reach the CIO level. Is only ever going to reach that level, and at that level to be a cost focus, you know, and
Yes.
that focusing, and I think this is where I think that I would tend to look at the Capital One decision about, well, okay, well, we've spent enough time on engineering, right? We've spent enough time transforming our engineering practices. We've done this enough to know kind of how it goes. What we haven't quite done is focus on how do we accelerate the product creation cycle and the innovation cycle and use those lessons we've learned here outward and then create velocity to create momentum toward revenue generation and value creation and let that engine of engineering, you know, make that make that sing, right? So that's where I think just let's wait. How many of those 1,100 people, where do they end up? Are they, and what are they doing? Are they now doing things that are more centered on delivering to customers' needs, to fulfilling customers' unarticulated needs, things that they might not even have thought about? And and that instead of making the feature factory go faster and faster and faster, we we tap into the actual needs of the people we want to serve. So
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not even sure that. I mean, we see a lot of this one focus on delivered features faster, which is still a kind of what if we make the conveyor belt run twice as fast, then we can have twice the output at the same machinery cost. Wouldn't
mm,
that be a great thing? I do understand where this is coming from, but even then, I'm having this conversation a lot recently. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm primed or I get triggered or so. Um, because somebody told me in one conversation that you know the premise of Agile is all about delivery. So, like you said, that this one is part of this cost center thing. So we know who the customers are. We know basically, or even specifically, what they need. And now we just need to deliver it at minimum cost in a minimal amount of time at the best possible quality. That is always the premise. Um, and when we look at the lean startup cycle, for example, or the entire premise of lean startup, it's what if we don't know who our customers are? What if we don't know what they need? How do we find out? So we need to backtrack. Maybe the problem is not just optimizing delivery, but the real money that enterprises burn is not on the cost of delivery. The real money they burn is on delivering stuff that's not valuable to the customer, that doesn't generate revenue. I mean, in the end, even we know that the main cost of software is adaptation and maintenance of the product itself. But once a piece of code has been created, it can generate revenue forever as long as requirements and conditions don't change. So it's just a one-time cost compared to a potentially infinite source of revenue. And if in that case, I divide infinity by any finite number, it should still be infinity. So the real question we may have to answer is not how much does it cost, but how can we maximize the revenue of everything we're doing? And in that case, as an enterprise, we're often horribly misaligned between the market and the business ability to tap into this market. We're tapping into markets that don't exist. We're tapping into declining markets. We're tapping into saturated markets. Those kind of things mean that we're burning money. And if we're already burning money, does it matter whether we're burning 10,000 or 10 million? It's still something that there's
It's
nothing quite as useless as doing efficiently that which we should not be doing at all.
yeah, this is that I don't know that's the Drucker quote, right? There's
Yeah.
and I just saw an Acuff quote, the same thing, like doing the wrong things righter. That's it's the same deal. And this is where and I think Martin Dialming uh, shared something the other day about, and this is, I don't know, it's been kind of in the VA space for a while, but again, this is about the job to be done. What are the jobs to be done? What are we, is what we're producing, what needs is it trying to fill, right? Again, asking different questions and pausing to say, well, what is that? Yeah, just taking a moment, like saying, to flip the script. I think that's important. So don't just shovel cheap stuff. Don't shovel stuff cheaper. Make sure that you are identifying needs that people actually have. What is the job to be done?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in that one, we still see this disjoint that at some level we still assume that it's somebody else's job to define the job to be done. And the function of engineering is just to execute on this. That is still the major perception when you look. In some extent, we still see this in many software development teams, but that is also the boardroom attitude.
Well, and this is the siloing effect, right? As if you just go with the assumption that you have an engineering organization and you have a product organization, and never the twain shall meet, then this will only ever be a problem. It will
Yes.
be like that in infinity. And this is where, well, what if Capital One and others in that domain, what if there's kind of shuffling the cards a little bit, right? And actually saying, well, maybe, oh my gosh, why don't we have product management in our team, in our 12-person team or whatever? Why don't we build into or become a learning organization that we wish to learn how as teams to do effective product management, to seek as a team, have the whole capability to address a market need or an anticipated market need as more autonomous, independent, units.
Yes.
And that's, I don't know, maybe that is in the mind of the folks who made these decisions. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But it is worth considering that a company that has gone through 10 agile transformations or whatnot has learned something, that someone is there who has realized and is attempting to do something a different way. And I'm curious to see how that how that plays out. Now, in the 1100 souls that had their lives turned upside down, I feel for them. I do, and I know you do, you can't be a human and not feel for someone who loses their gig. But what what is the whole story? We see the event of the firing, right? This whatever in this 1 week. We don't see the 6 months leading up to it and now the 6 months after. Like this is expanding our view of what is what is the purpose of this event? What does it serve? So
Yes. I mean, how to say, I think that one of the reasons that this event is so remarkable because it singled out the so-called agile roles.
yes,
And in other companies, like in Google, we do not see this happening. And I, okay, I've never worked for Google, but one thing that I presume is that in Google, they do not have such a large amount of people with the job title containing the word agile, which comes back to the point you initially made is why are we required to talk about it so much instead of just being agile, just this being our natural way of working. Now I have one friend who's a so-called people manager, and what he is doing is not really comparable to what an agile coach or a scrum master is doing, but what he is doing specifically within an organization that is able to deliver business requirements, product based on good engineering practice. There's this third aspect, and that is the people side of things, and somebody has to take care of it. You don't need to call it agile. You always have those pillars. You have the technical part, you have the business part, and you have the people part. And one of the things that I realize, and that, like I said, too much focus in agile on the part of let's assume everything is clear, we just need to deliver, 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 and we need to do it more efficiently, more effectively, in better time, quality, budget, whatever. It doesn't matter. That is the presumption. But the elephant in the room that I always like to talk about in this one is we know that we need to produce some kind of product value in order to reach the market. And if we're doing a poor job on a product, we have some kind of quality issues. And we know already from the times of Six Sigma that if your profit margin is 10 product and you have 5% defect rates, you're killing your business because quality is too low to still survive. So you need to get your quality up. And then we also learned, and that is, I think, the XP guys and Scrum guys, they did do a pretty good job of bringing this concept of technical debt. That even if the quality from a customer perspective seems to be good, but we're not technically sustaining, we're also killing our business because our ability to deliver approaches zero pretty, yeah, in terms of a business life cycle, 5 or 10 years, rapidly. We don't see it from sprint to sprint, but we see it when we're looking at it from a business perspective. We can't do that. Technical debt, we need to address it. And then it comes to the question people, people systems. We're talking in Agile all about people and interactions over processes and tools. So, as people, it's me, you. It's our ability, which is objective, but also our psychological and physiological state. If that one deteriorates, we also can't sustain. Yeah, of course, from a business perspective, they can just kick me out and find
yeah,
somebody younger and more healthy than me. But then, with kicking me out, my experience goes. I'm not just
Mm,
talking about my objective skills, but also my experience goes out. And my experience is an asset to the company. And this asset is also has a value. And if we're churning through this value, we can never become a learning organization because we'll always be learning the same things. And the
mm.
next part is the interactions of people. So, say I have a certain experience and qualifications, skills, a way of working, and you also have that. And it's different. And that's where I get really into a mechanical analogy. If you have two gears and they're moving at different speeds, then they will churn, they will break potentially. And the friction that you have between those two cogs, it will probably cost you more than what they produce. And
Yeah.
who's paying attention to that? That is what we are not really addressing in our desire to deliver more, faster, better. But it is at least as important to the organizational system as a whole. And that is the third interest group. We have the technology, the business or the product, and we have the people or the organizational aspect. We need to build a better organizational system, not just better products with better technology, because better organizational systems can take care of better products and better technology.
Well, and that I just you, very simply, the idea of more, faster, better, right? Two of those three things you can actually measure.
Yes.
One of them is totally subjective, and that's the point of this whole. I mean, that's what you're saying. I mean, well, it's very easy to measure the faster, more faster, more faster, more faster, and not even take account into what does better mean. What kind of better are we looking for? Are we and does producing more and more faster, does it produce the kind of better we're looking for? Does are we creating a saturation of this product? Are we developing features that are unused where we could be using capacity elsewhere? Is there thought being put? The questions of asking asking the not unaskable, but being willing to sit with the uncertainty of, well, are we doing are we doing the right thing? Is are we making a positive impact? What kind of impact are we making with this? And this is maybe when we talk about this the learning loops, the third learning loop, right? So we have a learning loop that we learned about doing this more and faster. And then, well, is there a different way we talk about the process of doing more and faster? And then we do that third loop around the top to say, well, is this even the right thing to be doing in the first place? Right? Is this to do? And that's important to have that the maturity to step back and and take account of the whole system, right? Not just the mechanical system or the software system or the process, but the human systems of the individuals and interactions. Those two, that is a system in and of itself. Each of us is a system of our own thoughts, feelings, and body. And the two of us together in this conversation is a system. So when we bring up the idea of systems thinking, and that is I think that's that missing piece. Like, okay, now we have gone through 150 years of manufacturing widgets and atoms, and now we've been manufacturing bits and throwing them at people. Can we now at least take another look at how the systems of humanity are being impacted by that? and just slow down a moment. Maybe faster is not better. More and faster may not be better. Better is better. And what does that mean? So,
This one leads us even to a different perspective, and I was just musing about that this morning. Are you familiar with the concept of the Kontradiev cycle? It's an economic concept
no, no.
uh, that's basically the principle that economies they go through cycles of growth, boom, recession and depression. And those cycles, they tend to be about about more or less like a human's lifespan. 60 to 100 years was the perception of this economist Kontradiev who came up with that one. The thing is that when we look at Agile, specifically Agile as a means of delivering more and faster, uh, twice the work in half the time. You know I'm joking. But
Yeah.
in any case, that is how it was sold. Uh, it coincides with two major boom periods. The first is the boom of digitalization. So that everything went from paper processing to digital processing, well, suddenly we could do a lot more, a lot faster. I'm not talking about a factor two between processing a document on paper and processing a digital form. I'm talking about factors 10,000 or a million or more. We've gone through this boom. Everything that what used to be on paper, well, everything. I'm living in Germany, so I'm talking about something else.
Yeah.
Anyway, we still have fax machines. There's one advantage: fax machines are not so easy to hack, so we have some computer security advantages here.
No, yeah.
Uh, in any case, that's digressing. So the point is that is the boom of digitalization, and the other is we had since the banking crisis really the influx of cheap money. Interest rates were low and potentially even negative. So who cares if I'm only making 1% profit? It's still more than the interest I would pay on borrowing the money. So even if I would operate at 1% profit, I'm still being profitable.
Hmm.
But with interest rates being on an increase, I have to think twice about where I put my money in because even I just bring it to the bank at 3%, I'm still making more than a 1% business. And I can't operate a 1% business if I have to take a 3%
So
loan.
long. Hmm.
So that is one thing that the Agile since 2008 is when Agile really started to become the thing for companies worldwide. Agile grew up in its childhood days and in its, how to say, in its teenage years,
Yeah.
in a period where money was interest free, or basically it was a period of free money, so to say. If you can make any profit, it's good money, but this is changing now. And in terms of the uh, cycle of digitalization as a whole, we see that this one is not booming anymore because it's a saturated market by now. And this one coincides at a larger scale with the Kontradiev cycle of the Western economy. We had our boom. What's coming now? We can maybe keep it a bit somewhat stable, but we see already we're moving into a recession. And what happens if we get into a depression, which, how to say, how long it will last and how bad it's going to get? We don't know. But it's predictable that this will happen. And if we have an approach like Agile, which was created and built on the premise that we are in a boom.
Yeah.
How will this one serve us when we are not in a boom?
Ooh. That I think is a good question for us to pause on and for continue our next conversation, I think. Do you agree?
Yes.